So I'm not only introducing this session, I'm going to moderate this session. So we're shaking things up on you a little bit. I'm Jason Whittet. I'm a Chief Strategy Officer at Authorium. We are a government process automation company. We're going to be talking about AI and how it's driving efficiency in government. And I'm very, very fortunate, we are very, very fortunate to have two of the leading urban disruptors, transformers, innovators in Miguel Gamiño, who is a principal co-founder at SuperCityAI and former CTO of like half the cities in the United States, maybe more than any place else. Anybody else?
Well, New York City, so that's, yes.
Okay. And then Mark Wheeler, who former CIO of Philadelphia, and also a principal of Allogra AI, and also, little known fact, an amazing dinner theater, improv.
Yeah, I will plug that. The Dinner Detectives national program, you got one here in New York City, but come to Philly. Ours is better, I'm told.
All right, so if you're ever in Philly, Dinner Detectives. Okay, so we're going to talk about this. Before we jump in, I just want to give a huge shout out to Artie and John Paul and everybody at Smart City USA for pulling us together. And then all of you, all of us, I think, share a passion for transforming cities, for urban futures. And none of this happens without you. And for us to have this ability to come together and meet each other and to share and connect and learn. So I would love to invite you, if I can on your behalf, connect in with Miguel and Mark, and let's not have this be just a 30-minute session, but let's have this be the start of a longer conversation. And then for all of you who are in your communities and trying to transform, trying to make things happen, change can be hard, right? It can be scary. It can be hard to get people on board to do things differently. And now that we're in this era of AI, that is only making things even more interesting. One of the things I love to say when we talk about urban transformation is this quote, and some people say it's a curse, but may you live in interesting times. And I kind of think it means, like, if everything was fine and there was no work to be done, we could all sit in our rocking chairs and watch the Final Four and read a book or whatever. But these are interesting times, and cities are under so much pressure. Globalization, urbanization, putting pressure on services, operations, climate change. We've already heard about fires and floods and all the other things going on. It's requiring, it's demanding that we think differently, that we act differently. The same old ways of working just aren't cutting it anymore, and it's requiring us to reimagine how we operate government and how we provide citizen services. And the same time that we're getting those pressures, technology is evolving. So the cloud, we just heard about cloud and cloud security, open data, mobility, and now AI. And so I think what we're going to hope to do with this session is to inform, to hopefully inspire, and give you some things you can take back to take your subject matter expertise, your tradecraft in how cities are run, with the technologies and the capacity to use AI to transform your communities. Does that sound good? Cool. I'm going to hand it over to Miguel and to Mark to say a few words just about yourselves. If you want to talk a little bit about some of the things you're working on, and anything you want to frame the subject.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Jason. Thank you to John Paul Farmer and Artie and the whole Expo group for inviting us to participate here. It gave me a good reason to come back to New York, which has been a great trip down memory lane. I was in government. I was on that side of the table for many years. I was the CIO for the city of El Paso, where I'm from, and then San Francisco, and then I was the CTO here in New York City. And so I learned a lot about what it means to try to work from that side of the table. And so now what we're doing with SuperCityAI is bringing these tools to bear to help people like the former me execute on that opportunity to use these tools to deliver a better connected and a better service delivered community. So we use AI tools to deliver chat in a way that the government can control and make sure that it's delivering accurate information. No shade to the other big three-letter chat out there. But it's hard for a government to lean into that when it can't guarantee accuracy. We aggregate news and information in a way that's easy for consumers or members of the public to consume. And then we also currently do payments. Take a photo, Apple Pay, accept cash, all those sorts of things. So that's the beginning of what we're doing and how we're using AI, the use cases that we identified, partially from our experience having worked in government and from what we've learned from government. And then we've got a roadmap of things that we're going to use AI to do going forward. And that informs the conversation today about what those ideas are and kind of the approach and the thinking that cities maybe can and should take when they're considering how to use these tools to deliver better service. So.
Mark Wheeler, as Jason said, I'm the former CIO of the city of Philadelphia. I've gone out on my own to establish an LLC called Allogra, where I partner with governments who want to do innovation projects and how they can interact and do their procurement and onboard and be very successful with companies like SuperCityAI and other smart city and GovTech companies. I currently have a full-time role, though, with a federal agency that I'm not here to represent or to talk about, but I do data governance and AI implementation at the federal level. And I can tell you that the challenges that we have at federal to state and local are all very much the same with the adoption of these tools. And we come at it, or I come at it from a data governance perspective, and is your house in order in terms of the information that you want to surface with something like SuperCityAI or any of the other tooling that's out there, and how are you managing for that data privacy, security, classification. So that's really where my expertise falls. I've been doing a lot of consultation, again, with federal agencies, but also on my own with city governments, thinking about that like data sprawl, data landscape. Because as cities, we may be very good at managing for the requirements from like a HIPAA perspective or a CGIS or other type of regulatory controls on an administrative database. But with all of that repository of the work in progress, the policy positions, papers, the things that we have on our own personal OneDrive, Google Drive repositories, that is the space in which AI is going to have a lot of value for you, but it's also the one where the data governance doesn't really exist. So that's a starting ground of data is for AI, but AI is fundamentally data.
That's amazing. And I want to come back to the governance and setting the stage, the foundational things. But first, when we think of AI and efficiency, let's start off with a little bit about efficiency. And what does that mean in the context of cities? When you are in government, when you work now, as cities are thinking about change, what is efficiency? What are the drivers? What are the goals, the objectives of making government more efficient?
I mean, I think the textbook is do more with less, right? I mean, that's the ultimate definition of it. I think it's the opportunity with these tools. Well, one thing I want to say to kind of frame this a little bit is AI is not new. AI has just become mainstream, and so everybody's talking about it these days because of ChatGPT, and it's kind of become something that an everyday person now interacts with, and so now they see it. But these tools have existed in the background for a long time. It's been very difficult, I'll speak for myself, from inside the government to take advantage of those tools because they were hard to get to. It was hard to get to the talent that knew what to do with them. It was hard to get to the technologists or the suppliers or the partners who had access to those platforms. So I think that now that it's become mainstream, people are less intimidated by it. Those existing tools and the new ones are now coming to the table in a way that governments can use them to, and I think one of the primary kind of objectives and opportunities is that efficiency piece, right? Because these tools can do a lot more, a lot quicker. The challenge is we have to make sure that they're doing it accurately and correctly, because the downside to that speed and scale is if it goes wrong, it goes wrong fast. But if it goes right fast. So it's not only the efficiency piece, but the accuracy in the journey to that efficiency that's really important. But at the end of the day, it's just making things easier for people, right? This is a self-deprecating statement because I was responsible for these clunky websites and all the stuff that I'm trying to help now. That was my fault in the beginning when I was in government. But it was very hard. It was very hard to change that from inside. And it was very inefficient for a member of the public to try to figure out the city's org chart and who's responsible for what so that I know how to get a hold of the right person to do the right thing. And then you encounter the inefficiency of the process itself. But getting to even that first step was very difficult. I think what AI helps do, and what we're trying to do, is just kind of remove those barriers. Bring it to people in a language that they understand, in a way that's congruent with how they live their lives, and then try to make the process more efficient along the way.
I think for me, the efficiency is going to be most seen in three different areas. One's procurement, the other is in the compliance and controls that we have, the auditing processes, and then it's surfacing the right information for the right people at the right time. That is, there's a whole industry around customer experience that has been trying to get at this through our 311 programs, re-engineering our websites, thinking about the ways that human beings want to go and get at information, and they don't do it through an org chart. But that's still very complicated when there's the right information, but we don't know what repository it is, and 311 agents aren't exactly librarians in the sense of like, I know exactly who to talk to and what website to look at, and I can get you the information. It's more of a routing process to get it to the right system, so there's a work order. The beauty of the generative AI piece is that it now gives us a commodity tool to pull that information together so we could surface it in ways that we didn't know before, and we can look at real inefficiencies that we're either stumbling over, we don't want to look at properly, that would just, the generative AI is just going to have to point that out because it's going to think or work in a very logical way for us with its predictability models. Procurement is the big one. Think about all of the times that you've tried to go about and pull together a procurement process. The steps can be opaque. The way people approach it is very different. The rules are maybe constantly changing. Having a set of tools that are constantly reviewing whatever the standard procedures are, making sure that that information is documented first and foremost and that gets validated. But having an agent sit beside you to do that procurement work, from the requirements gathering, spitting out what a scope of work looks like, and then moving through all of the compliance steps, which is another big piece of this that is difficult, opaque, constantly changes. And I think the only way we were successful in our roles was the personal relationships. So you had to learn who knew what and who was that knowledge center. And hopefully AI just accelerates and speeds that and gets it out of the way. So I think that's where the real efficiency gains are going to be. And I in the next questions, we can talk about some of the tools besides Miguel's that I think they're out there to help folks do that.
There are no other.
There are no other tools.
No other tools. So before we get to that, how do you go, what's the right recipe of people? So obviously you've got technologists, but then you've also got people in the businesses that understand procurement or transportation or social services delivery. How do you foster that collaboration and get people excited, open to leveraging AI to transform their business processes?
I mean, I think part of it is it's a lot easier, like I said today, when the person you're talking to in the government is experiencing this reality in some other part of their life, right? So it's not exactly on to your question, but I'm going to come back to it. In every other part of our lives, we're experiencing improved user experiences when AI is helping, whether it's online help with legal advice or booking travel or doing all these other commercial things. It's getting better and easier, right? And the government, for a long time, just even when we were in those roles, was still like a step or two behind what people were experiencing in every other aspect, with every other industry. Now I think the opportunity, and the opportunity back to the efficiency question, is that all of those folks were doing a lot better, and they were only managing one business. American Airlines is huge, but all they do is transport at one. And the governments, the cities, they have like 20 businesses, right? They're in real estate, they're in retail, they're in financial, they pick an industry, and the government has a department that's running that as a sub-industry within government, right? So the opportunity is even greater, right? To your point, the data volume is even greater. The problem set's even greater. So how does that 311 operator know everything? They don't, right? And to Mark's point, we had to go find the people in those businesses, back to your question, who were the knowledge brokers, who were the process owners, that you could actually get things done. So now, the same people that Mark and I used to have to maintain relationships with and go to from the inside to get things done, those are the same people now that we need to recruit as champions to allow us to help them bring these tools to bear to make those processes better and hopefully finally catch up with every other industry in the world, right? Is help the government match what people are experiencing in every other part of their life.
And that's what I think you're saying, those people are consumers as well, and most people now are digital natives, and they know what good looks like, and they know if a service isn't.
I think a lot of people are like, they're in their personal life, and they have a brilliant experience, and they're like, I wish we did it like that, right? And I think those are the...
Well, you made a good point that in the public sector, it's not one business line with emergencies that come up because, maybe the airline crashed or now there's a new regulatory change that just, happened immediately and we've got to react to it. Cities are dealing with emergencies across those business lines constantly. A policy director or a deputy mayor or the mayor themselves constantly have a fire hose at them. So coming to them and saying, well, I've got this great AI tool, we've got efficiencies, we can do process mapping really quickly, we can surface procurement information, we can make these RFP processes go much faster. I know what they're thinking. It's like, this is a fad. I've heard this all before. We've seen these bubbles burst. I'm not going to hop on this right away. And what's the cost? And if you've actually used the tool, I think that's the only way around a lot of those impediments and challenges we just set up for ourselves is, I'm always busy, I don't have time to play with this, I don't really think there's value. I think playing with it is the only way to do it. I was part of a program in January with a group of cities that came together who admittedly had never used a chat GPT or type tool at all, and were adamantly against bringing it into their governments. But by using that in our workshop and process over and over again, they began to see the power and the value, the potential value for them. And I think that's the only way you kind of change hearts and minds is just to experiment.
And I think also our technology is great, but our business model is maybe the bigger piece of our secret sauce. Because at the end of the day, exactly what Mark said, you're sitting across the table and this person has their phone's blowing up. They've got 3 people standing outside their office, demanding that they respond to something urgently, and you're here pitching them the future, right? They're like, I want to, and I love this idea, I don't have time for this, right? And so you get shoved off into the procurement path, typically. Go respond to an RFP or help someone write an RFP or whatever. So what we've done, not just to hack the tech so that it's useful and compliant with the government, we've also hacked the business model. So we don't charge governments directly. So part of it is we can bring it to bear and demonstrate. I can show it to you, I can prove it to you first, and then you can endorse it and help me scale it in your community. And so again, nothing negative against the typical vendor community that's out there selling, but when I was on the buyer side of that was a lot of times the only obstacle was, I get it. I'm the same person now that I was when I was the CIO or CTO of any of those cities. So if I can see it now, I saw it then. And I could see it across the table, but I couldn't get to it because I had to go through an RFP process, I had to put something out. The one that I thought was the best tech maybe didn't win the RFP. I can say all these things openly now because I'm not in government. But that's what happens in real life, right? And so we don't always get the best tech. We get maybe the least expensive or the incumbent that might not be the emerging tech. And so I think for the supplier or for the provider folks in the audience, it's also just empathizing with a person on the other side of the table, right? They're slammed. They might want to do something with you. It's on you to make it easy for them to say yes, right?
Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say that for the individuals in the audience who tend to be the smart city manager, the innovation manager, the people who are bringing these projects to the forefront and trying to introduce the technology to whoever would be implementing it, whether it's in your public works or your procurement department. The one thing I would ask you to remember or to try to see is that the rules around procurement and compliance and all of the no's, those are self-imposed rules. We say that they're laws, and in fact, many times they are not laws, so ask for the receipts and make sure you get them. I'm sure you know this, but a lot of people don't realize that the number one fight and battle we have is with ourselves and our own perception of risk, and whether individuals have actually assessed the risk Or are they relying and saying, well, we've got NIST in place and we have to do what NIST says. We've got CGIS in place and we have to do what CGIS says. NIST is a guideline about risks. You make the choice about what risk and how you accept them and assess for them, and then you codify that into process. What you need to do is challenge whether anyone has actually thought through the risk profile of all of the innovations, especially AI, that you're bringing to them. Because if you're saying everything's at a high level, that's not accurate and true. And you can't then say, well, there's a rule about that that says we can't procure for AI. If you're saying that you're following NIST, you're following a risk protocol. Or I'm saying, if you're following NIST, you're following a risk protocol. What is it, and have you actually codified it? And can you go back as implementers to challenge what's there? Because that's the biggest hurdle you're going to have to do, is making people see that what they are calling barriers actually don't exist. And AI, the generative AI is a perfect tool for that.
Yeah, 100%. You're making me remember a little PTSD. But
I still have PTSD, so that's why I'm
I remember
ranting
this.
right now.
Again, I can tell these stories now because I'm not in government. In San Francisco in particular, I remember, but in all 3 cities, every time someone told me, no, you can't do that, I'd say, show it to me in writing. Show me where it's written that I can't do that. 9 times out of 10, it didn't exist. It was urban legend, right? It was like, oh, well, we've never done that, or so-and-so used to not like that, so it just became like kind of social policy, not actual policy. So underscoring Mark's point, if you see something exciting and someone says no, ask for the receipts. Yep. Beautifully said, right? Because I bet you can if you really want to.
Does your tool allow you to do like current state? Can someone go to your tool and like talk through current state? Because that's the most valuable thing a generative AI tool will do. Like if you go to riverwork.com, it's about process mapping and individuals talking about the process instead of being forced into a room by their manager who's sitting in the corner looking at them sternly. So they're not going to surface what they think the process is. They're not going to be entirely honest. There may be bias in the room leading them to like overthink or miss a step, that on their own talking to an AI conversational agent and then having that information kind of analyzed and spit out so a human verifies it. You have a group of people in the room who may do permits, all doing the permit process differently, doing it from their own training and perspective. Again, when you pull them into the room, they're going to be reticent to talk through things, or they may all be skipping the same problem collectively, but by themselves, just talking to an agent that keeps them on track. And then you can see that in literally black and white within seconds. I think is one of the most valuable, again, outcomes of being able to use these AI tools, is that we can pull ourselves out of some of those biased conversations that we typically have with each other in groups.
And that's part of back to the theme of efficiency, right? A lot of the inefficiencies are because of these urban legends, right? I didn't think I could do it, or I thought I had to do it this way, and that creates the added bureaucracy. And if you peeled it back, you'd realize, wow, it isn't 12 steps, it's 4 that are actually...
We constantly miss that, or the handoff we give to the other department, we think something's being done that isn't happening.
Right. So ours does that. Ours is public facing. So ours helps in that notion of demystifying the truth for the public. So the public asks how to pay a parking ticket, when and where, and we give them the actual steps, not the urban legend, right? That, you can only pay it downtown, when in fact you could pay it at any place. Those types of things. But you gave me a product roadmap addition, and we could turn that inside and absolutely help advise them. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, they're doing a great job. They're friends of mine. But I would say that from my perspective as a CIO, and then someone who continues to do this in a government context, evaluating current state against printed SOPs if they exist, or the printed regulation, or the receipts, again, a very valuable tool. If I'm going to bring in innovation and I want to make a change, I have to know what the current state is and why the pain points are there, or where the waste is. And I think being effective and efficient with that is the most powerful and dramatic thing that we could do in order to get innovation moving within government.
So I'm hearing lack of clarity creates confusion. How important, how much would you stress for cities to pass AI regulations or policies to make that clear?
I mean, I think that they should I don't know if it's policy or just a position statement, that they should be taking advantage of it and leveraging it. And they shouldn't be, my personal opinion is, they shouldn't be trying to over-regulate it or choke it, right? I use this analogy all the time. AI is like the internet was before. And if the internet, when it was first emerging and we thought email was the end-all be-all use case of the internet, if we would have choked it down to that's what it can be used for, then you never would have gotten to the cloud, you never would have gotten to Netflix or anything else. So I think similarly, it's about the position of the city should be, we know it's valuable, we need to maintain accuracy and make sure that it's delivering with legitimacy and integrity, but not try to pretend like you could predict all the ways it can or should be used. I think it needs still some room for that exploration.
The GovAI Coalition has templates for policies and manuals and programs that are available to governments to use, and it's created by governments, by government for government. I would recommend looking at their policy position. I personally, from the perspective of a former city government official, and then working within government for years, I would say the least restrictive policy is the most effective one. It's guidelines that people need that's the most important. I'll come back to my opening statement about data, that if it's rooted in your data classification cybersecurity rules, you're in a much better position to be effective with AI, because that's the grounding basis. It's what is classified, what is not. What is protected information under regulation, what is not. What do we just want to keep within our teams? What do we want to share with others? That is a conversation that you need guidelines around. And people really don't always understand PII from other forms of sensitive information. Use your cybersecurity programs then. You're constantly being told you need training. Many of you can't access your networks until you complete training. It should be incumbent upon the government to make sure that their training model is now incorporating, what can go into chatbots, what can't, how should you be classifying your data, getting you all ready to do the work with generative and predictive AI, I think should be a goal of the cybersecurity training programs themselves.
And this went really fast. I want to make sure we get a couple questions in. I think we only covered about a fraction of what we were going to talk about. Blame the moderator. Does anybody have a question that they want to ask, just to make sure we get your thoughts in?
I did want to pick up on Miguel's point, making life easier for people. One of the areas I think that cities often fall down in is in terms of social service provision. There's many, many different departments, many different roles that they have, but oftentimes the data is 90% overlap. And yet people are being driven to one service, then another service, then another service. I have a son with disabilities, and only late in the game did we learn that there are available services we had no idea about. So I wonder if there's a way to use AI to say, give us all the information you have about yourself, and we'll tell you which programs you might want to take advantage. We'll kind of have a sort of common app for social services within cities.
So if I was going to plant a question, that would have been it.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. And the reason is that it's a couple things that you touched on. One is the overlap of information, but even before you get to that point, it's the agencies having trouble finding the people who qualify for these programs in the first place, right? So in our product roadmap, in the next version, we're facilitating exactly that. So we help the cities and the public connect on those issues. Our chat will go to you and say, hey, the city has this program, and based on your activity, we think you might qualify for it. Do you want to apply? When you say yes, in chat conversational interface, we'll say, well, you're going to need to provide these 5 documents. Let me know when you're ready. You'll say, yes, I'm ready. Attach photos of those 5 documents. Attach photos just like you're texting your friends. We'll read those documents. So it does a few things. It helps with the outreach in a targeted way, right? Reaching the right people with those programs that need them and will benefit from them. Making it easy for them to apply for them. Extracting data off those documents so they're not having to type their name 5 different times on every page of a government form. All that stuff's there. So we use these AI tools to make life easier. But then also when it gets to the program manager or sponsor, right? They know that it's complete. They know that the documents are verified. They know that it's accurate. We can identify the person even with selfie technology, that it's actually you who's applying for this program because you're the person that actually qualifies for that program. So we could do all these things in much less time with much higher, not just efficiency, but efficacy of that whole process. So spot on, that's right in the sweet spot of our ambition, that we think AI tools should do exactly that, to create that connection in an easier, efficient, effective way. So thank you.
If I could just tie in quickly the question about program and policy. This is a great one where you can ask the question, is it rights affecting or harming, or public safety serving and harming? If you've got a generative or predictive AI tools making decisions about who gets or doesn't get benefits, you want a policy around that. So you de-risk some of it by offering, like, you would qualify, maybe you qualify. We're going to try to protect, the access to many different sources of data, so someone can't use that in a way to identify a person who doesn't want to be identified through a search. So you have to kind of think through some of those scenarios, but that's where the policy should come in and have people do the right testing and the right approach, but never to say no to begin with, because I think that there are communities out there who would hear this and say, you're about to deny someone benefits. And I would say, that's not the goal. It's the recruitment to let people know it's available to them. It's to do the outreach, and then it's to give the service provider in the moment the ability to find out, yes, you definitely qualify. I don't need you to come here and proof yourself over and over again. We've got enough information that we can utilize to figure out who you are. And that's one of the examples where much lower risk when you're offering things, and it's not a determination being made without human beings in the loop.
And then the very last piece is then you can tie the programs together, right? If you've qualified applied and successfully qualified for this program, then we can say, oh, you probably qualify also for X, Y, and Z. We already know this stuff about you. Do you want to, apply here type thing? So spot on.
Mark Wheeler, Miguel Gamiño, thank you so much.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks.
SuperCityAI in the
Thanks,
App Store,
Jason.
Google Play. Download it, please.